Okay, we're live. So this is the farmOS monthly development call. We're just going to talk about what we're working on, and anyone's allowed to join and kind of join the discussion and go from there. So my name is Mike Stenta. I'm the lead developer of farmOS. Yeah, Doran, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Doran Cox, board president of FarmHack, and farmer in Lee, New Hampshire, and user of farmOS and supporter.
Great. Yeah, it looked like we had some other people joining. I did make a mistake this time with the Hangout also. I started an event, but it wasn't an on-air event, and that's the one that I kind of sent to everyone. So maybe some people will trickle in. I put a link to this on the old event when I created the new one, so we'll see. But yeah, I guess we'll just kind of go over what happened this past month, and then talk about what's coming up next. So I sent out a newsletter just a couple days ago, sort of going over the two main things that were sort of done this cycle. So I've got another computer here that I'm showing the agenda on, and it's kind of where I've got a list of the things. Can you see that, John?
I can.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so one of the biggest things that is part of this release now is user management and role delegation. So what this means is, so previously we had a single role in the system called farm manager, and that kind of was a role that allowed someone to log in and access everything in farmOS. So, as we were kind of moving forward with that, we've always been kind of talking about adding more roles for less privileges and that kind of thing. So maybe I should back up a little bit, and just for anyone who doesn't know. So farmOS is built on Drupal, and Drupal has a very powerful access control layer on it that allows you to kind of create roles for user accounts. So people have user accounts that they log in with, and each user account can have a role. And those roles have a list of permissions that give them access to certain aspects of an application. So in farmOS now we have the farm manager role, and that's what gives people access to everything in farmOS. What I just added in beta 6 is two new roles, farm worker and farm viewer. So farm worker has pretty much all the same permissions as farm manager, minus a couple of administrative things, and they'll probably separate a little bit more as we move, but right now they're fairly similar. And then farm viewer is a role that just gives you read access to farmOS. So if you want to share kind of what you're working on with someone, you can grant them a farm viewer role. They can log in and view everything in farmOS, but they can't edit anything. So they can't create new tasks, they can't add areas or assets, or edit existing ones. Yeah, so that should be pretty useful, I think. You can kind of get your whole team set up.
That became really evident, important in our use of farmOS, working with researchers, crop advisors, extension folks, also working towards who are using it for organic certification to be able to give a login to our certifier.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and I think those two roles ought to do it.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, and as we move forward, we may decide that there's other ones that we need to add, so we can kind of make that decision as we go on. But because it's Drupal 2, anyone who has this set up themselves has the control to kind of create whatever they want. These are just ones that come with farmOS. So they're prepackaged, they're sort of managed in a new module called Farm Access. But if you install this yourself and set it up and host it yourself, you have full control over it. So you can create as many different roles as you want and set all the permissions however you want. So yeah, I think these will come in handy. And I think as we move forward too, we'll start to refine the actual permissions that are available too. So right now we have a couple of standard permissions, like the ability to view, edit, and delete assets, as well as logs and taxonomy terms. So you can kind of assign those separately to different roles. But there's I'm sure there's a lot of use cases that will even fall outside of just those basic permissions. So we can start to think about those and add those as we move forward. So the other big thing, and this is, Doran, you and I have been talking about this a lot, is Geo Fields on all kinds of logs. So it kind of started as Geo Fields on movements was sort of the prime objective, and I'll kind of explain why. But while I was at it, I was just like, well, let's add Geo Fields to everything. So we've got Geo Fields now on movements, activities, observations, harvests, and input logs. So previously, before Beta 6, the only place there was really a Geo Field was on the area type. So when you're kind of mapping out your farm and defining your areas, there's a Geo Field. And a Geo Field in Drupal is essentially just a field that stores geometric data, geospatial geometric data on a map. So you can define polygons, points, lines. And that's how we define the areas and display them on a map. But those are kind of static. You map out your areas, and those are kind of meant to be not really changing that much. You put down your fields, your buildings, your properties, those kind of things. But one of the use cases that didn't really cover is sort of temporary areas. And so an example of that is sort of paddocks that move, like movable chicken fence or goat fencing that you're kind of moving from place to place and are setting up on the fly. Previously, you could add each one of those sort of polygons on your map as a separate area in the system. But if you're moving them around a lot, then you end up with a lot of paddocks kind of all over. So I can actually kind of show what that looks like. I'll just share my screen real quick. All right, maybe I won't share my screen. Here, I'll do it on this one instead. I know this one's working. And then I'll kind of explain how this whole Geo Field on logs works and what that means. Just sort of log in here. Okay, so this is just my property here. It's just a small place, but I've got my areas mapped out, and I've got some chickens that I'm moving around. The internet was giving me a little trouble before I started up. I was kind of worried that we were going to get some issues here. Okay, cool. So this is just sort of an overview of my place. It's got the property is outlined in purple. I've got some fields outlined in yellow, buildings in red, and then a lot of these little green areas are paddocks. So I originally was putting them in for each different paddock. This computer is frozen right now. Okay, there we go. So I was kind of moving them through the fields in different places, and each time I was kind of drawing the fence. So I have just some chicken fence that I move around, sort of netting. and I was drawing out the field each time, and you can see it kind of gets a little cluttered. So what Geo Fields on movements essentially means is when you go in and create a movement record in farmOS, so you have your list of assets, which are your animals or whatever. When you're moving them, you create a movement log to describe their movement to a new place. So here's a list of movement logs. I just moved them recently to the upper garden. So previously, I would be defining different polygons for each one, and then move them to that polygon. So you can see the hill chicken paddock 2 is one example of that. Now it can all be done in the movement log itself. So you can define a very precise geometry within the upper garden. So essentially what you're doing is saying, okay, I'm moving my chickens to this larger area, the upper garden, which is a permanent area. But then also on the movement log, you can draw a polygon to map out precisely where they ended up. So this is the movement log. Sorry for the lag here. I've got a Chromebook that I'm presenting this screenshot on, and it is very slow right now. So okay, so this shape right here is what I just drew. This is the new precise location of the chicken fence, but it's within the upper garden. So eventually, I'm going to kind of clean up a little bit of my data and move a lot of those things into movement logs, so they make a little bit more sense. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to convey that, and a lot of the times you won't really be using those kind of things. But for people who do, that's there now. Where it's really kind of cool, though, is that it's not just on movement logs, it's on activities, observations, inputs, harvests. So now, if I go and add an activity, I really wish my screen share was working on this computer. It's a lot faster. Okay, so I'll add an activity. So say I plowed a field. Now I can record that happened, describe where it happened, but I can also map it out on a map and draw out exactly where that took place. And in addition to that, just like with the areas, you can upload a file to sort of geocode from data that's stored in a file. Right now it only works with KML files. But that's something we should look into adding more options for.
Yeah, and Mike, that's a particularly important point, that this feature was really necessary in order to be able to bring in GPS tracking data if you have it on your tractor, and start to be able to integrate in more of the sensor data that's coming in.
Exactly. So it's really going to be this is a central storage place for all of the geo data that your farm is collecting.
Right, and if you can imagine, if just as you're moving your portable fence around, you can have geolocation on your corner posts or so forth, be able to import those files. So you can get a much more precise idea of how long the animals were at a particular location rather than a general paddock. So I think this is really important to match how, especially rotational grazers, and folks rotating a lot of cover crops and changing beds and adapting, so you're not doing a uniform application of any management within a field. I think this is a really important feature to be able to capture that variability.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's capturing these kinds of files as it is, either from tractors or DIY kind of things. But most of them are just files that you end up with. They're not really organized or related to other sort of concepts in your farm. So this sort of gives you a repository, a central place to kind of store these things, relate them to one another, and an archive so that you can go back and kind of view things. And there's a pretty cool feature that I'm going to be working on in the Beta 7, which I'll get to later, that will sort of build upon these Geo Field on movement logs. that will essentially, we'll be able to build like a timeline map feature to be able to see the movements over time and see the polygons change on the map as the time goes by, as well as just having more specialized maps of different kinds of assets. So you can have a livestock-specific map that just shows polygons of active paddocks where there are actually animals. Same thing with planting. So you can see all of your currently active plantings, where they are on the map, all mapped out. So yeah, I think that's going to be pretty exciting. I'm going to stop presenting this screen because it's just so slow. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I think I got this one working now. Yeah, okay. Let me see if I can present this. Okay, here we go. So yeah, just to show you the activity thing. So say I come in and say add an activity. Plow the lower garden, and I'll link this to the lower garden so I can look it up later. And then, so right now the geometry fields are collapsed by default because they're all optional. You don't have to add them to a log. So there, now I can zoom in and I can see my lower garden, and then I can just draw a polygon to represent the area that I plowed. Save the log, and then that is store activities. And like I said, you can also upload files. So there's a general purpose file field that you can upload to, so that connects to this button here, Find Using Files field. So if you upload a KML file to this, it will pull that data into the map for you. So if you're storing things as KML, we've got some tasks coming into the issue queue for other types of data that we'll be able to add. This was just the easiest one to start with. So yeah, it's just a starting point. We're gonna move from here. Okay, jumping back. So looking back at the agenda. I think these new hangouts are still a little bit buggy. These are jumping around. Either that or I'm just confused. Anyways, okay, so we got the geo fields on logs. So a couple of smaller things after that from Beta 6. Vertical images, when you take them on your phone, a lot of the times the phones themselves, like especially iPhones and some Androids, they actually save them horizontally, so they're rotated 90 degrees when they shouldn't be. So then when you upload them to farmOS, they were just 90 degrees off. So I just added a simple module to auto-rotate those so they'll be correct, which is nice. New area styles, so I changed a bunch of the way that the styles look in farmOS for the areas. So previously they were kind of polygons that were sort of filled with a bit of an opacity of different colors. I changed some of the colors, but mainly I just got rid of the fill. So now they're all just outlines. So if you have if you have areas within areas, it won't sort of block your view of what's underneath, which is kind of annoying, I think. Another little thing, auto submit filter / sort. So what that is jump back to here. So just for example, if I go to the activities list, so there's this filter and sort thing. So if you've got your list of activities, you can kind of look at, filter down to certain ones based on start date or end date. You can also do this with assets. So if I look at my animals list, this is where it's really, I think, more handy. if I want to find a certain animal, I can just type in the name. But see, I don't have to push submit anymore on this. This just auto submits and pulls it up. So that's kind of handy. I can easily just come in and say, show me all of the chickens in chicken flock 1, and it'll auto submit that. Just a little handy thing. And then files and photo fields, I added to almost all the logs. So that's just kind of going along with the Geo Field being added to movement logs and activity logs. I added a files field to a lot so that you can geocode from files, and photos so that you can upload photos to things. So that was beta 6. That's what we got done there. And so just to kind of recap on this sort of procedure, I'm kind of trying to put out a new beta release of farmOS each month, just to kind of try to keep the momentum going and keep to a schedule. So they're not huge releases; they're monthly, and it's mostly in my free time, so incremental, but keeping the momentum going, keeping the ball rolling. So that's what the purpose of these calls are, is just to kind of go over what was done, talk about what we're going to work on next, etc. Yeah, so 2 other just small things. I created some modules. They're not actually included with farmOS, but they're modules that you can install in farmOS. One is called Farm Mushroom, and one is called Farm Maple. And they just add some record-keeping features for mushroom production and maple production, because I was playing around a little bit with that myself. Both of them are just kind of starts.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the web soil survey integration and sort of what's been going on there, just for folks?
Yeah, sure. So I can jump and show this. Is that showing my screen? Does it still see me?
We see you.
Yeah, okay. Something's buggy here, but let me try that again. Okay, does that work?
Nope. oh, there we go.
Really?
Yeah, we got it.
Oh,
yeah, we're good.
I need to present to everyone. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so so check this out. This is a feature we had before, but now it's working again. So this is the NRCS soil survey layer, and this is just provided by the NRCS servers. They made a change that they kind of upgraded all their servers recently, and it broke these layers for us, mainly because we're using the 3957 projection, which is the same as what Google Maps uses as their overlays, and so their service stopped offering that particular projection. But they got that all sorted out, and so now it's working again. You can kind of come in and turn on the layer to view your different soil types. Right now you still have to look them up separately to find out what they actually are. But a Google search will pretty much bring that up. What we're working on now with Cornell is actually a couple of features that will sort of integrate with this to do automatic lookups. So if you go to areas and soil tests, this is the log of soil tests. You can add a soil test and say spring lower garden test. So I'll just say this is lower garden. Oh yeah, this is a different site, so that's not in there. But I'll just geolocate myself to bring myself in. So then, yeah, what you can do is you can record where you took soil tests, so you can kind of put in the points that you sampled from and save this. So what we're working on now is kind of auto-populating this soil types field. So what it's going to do is, as you click on the map, it'll make a call out to the NRCS server and send the GPS coordinates and get back the actual soil type that is at that point. And these are all openly available APIs that they provide. So farmOS can just sort of hook into that and query that information. It's really handy. So that'll make this a little bit easier. It'll look up your soil types for you. You can also record your laboratory notes and photos, and if you get your soil test back as a PDF from the lab, you can upload them here so you have a record of it and you can come back and look at them. So I've got some of those just to show you that in action. Yeah, so now I can go in and remember exactly where I took these samples back in September of 2014 and view the PDF to see the actual results. There we go. I need to add some nutrients. And I've got high lead in that area. But anyways, yeah, so we're working on some things with Cornell to sort of enhance that whole aspect. Yeah, so I guess the only other thing I was going to talk about is sort of what I'm hoping to start working on for Beta 7, which would be, I guess, released at the end of October. Right now on that list, I've got inventory management, asset cluster maps, and unified hook for farm feature modules. So inventory management is a really big one, but I've got a lot of headway on it already. I don't know if I'll have it done by the end of October, but I might be able to get some pieces into place so that we'll be able to get it together over the winter. There's a lot sort of to sort of cobble together for that. So we could talk a little bit about that if you're interested. Or save that for another time.
It sounds like we'll also have a good bit of interaction with a number of other products working through APIs and so forth coming up. Looking at the Data Explorer from PhotoSync and looking at the OpenPipeKit and sensor module sort of feature set. Some of the other modeling, environmental modeling programs that will be calling on the API.
Yeah, so PhotoSync is a really exciting one. What this is a small device that it's actually a little 3D printed device that you can essentially clamp onto a leaf, and it will give you all kinds of information about the health of that plant. So PhotoSync has their own whole application for collecting this data and storing this data and viewing it and doing statistical analysis on multiple samples. So yeah, we're working with Greg Ostick at PhotoSync to try to figure out ways of sort of working together and getting that kind of data visible in farmOS so that you can kind of manage it all in one place. Likewise, OpenPipeKit is what RJ Steinert is working on, as well as some other folks at the Public Lab, and Doogie, who's on the call.
Who is on the call, but muted.
Yeah. So maybe if he can hear us, he'll jump in and describe it. But if not, I think I've got a pretty good sense. So OpenPipeKit is a really simple and really cool way of kind of setting up little sensors all over the place. So it's essentially a Raspberry Pi that is a pipe. I'm not the best at describing this. I wish RJ or Doogie were here, but essentially it's a.
They're calling a moat, right? A moat.
Okay, yeah. So you kind of create.
Try openpipekit.org.
Oh, did it? Okay, yeah. Right. Yeah, so essentially it allows you to pipe data from sensors to a storage place. So it works with a number of different sensors, and it works with a number of different sort of databases or storage sources, storage destinations. And so yeah, RJ and I are talking about setting it up so that you can essentially pipe data from sensors directly into farmOS. So farmOS would essentially become a storage destination. So you could have all of your pipes around your Raspberry Pis with sensors attached to them, and they would gather the data from the sensor and pipe it into farmOS, and then it would be visible in farmOS. So one of the nice things about OpenPipeKit is it's very generalized. You can kind of pipe the data wherever you want, and so one of those possible destinations will become farmOS soon, which I think is really exciting. Yeah. What other ones? I feel like we're working on a lot of different things here.
There's a lot of integrations out there on the modeling side too, but certainly on the sensor side, both the OpenPipeKit and PhotoSync, I think, are very complementary. OpenPipeKit really opening up a lot of different sensor types and making it more plug and play, so you don't have to be a programmer to pull off-the-shelf sensors and get the data into a useful format.
Yeah, I know it's exciting to see them working on that project too, and how it's really becoming. You just buy the parts, plug in the USB, and you're up and running.
Yeah.
And if we can get the connection to farmOS working, then it's even easier. Then you've got your farmOS set up. You throw a couple of sensors out in the field, and you don't even have to use the command line.
Right. Well, and then adding the data explorer that PhotoSyncs, on which will give you basic histograms and statistical analysis, you can actually start to make sense of the data that's flowing in from all those different points. So that gets to be exciting. We were talking about just adding bale counters to the bale in conjunction with this new geolocation field. We can start to do a very cost-effective yield monitor from these fields by bringing these pieces together.
Yeah, and then also we were talking with Dan earlier today about in an email about tracking heads of cattle using a collar, a GPS collar that you could actually use to view in farmOS where everyone is.
Right. So you're not only tracking them, but we have if they're transceivers, we can start to communicate with the cattle.
Yeah.
Through farmOS. Yep. So yeah.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, lots of cool possibilities.
Yeah. Well, it sounds far-fetched, except that I was mentioning that it's common practice now with hunting dogs to have both GPS collars and signal collars to locate them and also to communicate with them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so it's
yeah. I mean, all these things are getting cheaper. So.
Yep.
Easier. Cool. Well, so I won't go into too much detail on like the Beta 7 plan. A lot of the plans are pretty organic too. They'll change as we move. But I've got roadmaps online, so if you just go to drupal.org/project/farm, it's got links to the short-term, medium-term, and long-term roadmap. I'll show you what that looks like for anyone who's watching this later. So it's drupal.org/project/farm, and if you can't remember that, just go to farmos.org. That's easier, so I'll just do that instead. Go to farmos.org and then click on this link here for the Drupal distribution. This will show you the short-term, medium-term, and long-term roadmaps. So short-term is just for Beta 7, which is at the end of the month. Medium-term is for the 1.0 release, which is sort of a milestone, but isn't really well defined. It's just kind of whenever we feel like it's ready. And then long term, this is what I'm excited for, is porting farmOS onto Drupal 8. And we can all celebrate a little bit today because Drupal 8 just released its first release candidate. For the first time, here it is, 8.0.0 release candidate 1. So Drupal 8 is the new version of Drupal. We're on farmOS is built on Drupal 7. Drupal 8 has been in development for the past 5 years, and it brings with it a lot of really cool stuff from a developer standpoint, anyways. So I think it's really going to boost some things for us here. But that's a whole separate issue. I kind of created a meta issue in the farmOS issue queue, just kind of outlining the plan for Drupal 8. So I just went through and listed out essentially all of the modules that farmOS is using and what their status is in terms of Drupal 8. Because with the Drupal 8 upgrades, it's largely dependent on when all of the modules that we're using are ready for Drupal 8. So you've got Drupal core, and then you've got all the contributed modules. So farmOS is a collection of all that. So there's still a lot to be done, you can see on here. But the nice thing about Drupal 8 is a lot of the modules we're using are just in Drupal 8 core, so we won't have to wait for them. Like ctools, date, entity reference, module filter, navbar, registry auto load, blah, 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 all those. So you can come check out these issues if you're interested. Yeah, so that's I think that's all that I've got for today. I mean, it was a pretty straightforward thing. Anything else you have to say, Doran?
No, we'll be farmOS is part of the Open Agriculture Learning Series, which we did all spring, and we'll be having an updated version of that, or a second season, I guess, heading into the fall and winter. So I'm sure we'll be asking a number of the folks who are working on APIs together to present again, including the folks at farmOS. But we're going to have a number of new folks presenting as well. So that will be, we certainly invite anybody to check that out. And I think there's some really exciting collaborations underway. A lot of overlap with work on open layers and work through the APIs. So exciting to see the progress that we made already.
Yeah, very exciting. I'm looking forward to next season. So for anyone who's interested, this is the URL for that. It's openagriculture.weebly.com, and you can go on there to see archived presentations too. So this past season we kind of had a bunch of different groups, some open source, some not, all kind of presenting on things that they're working on. So it's just a really great way to bring people who are working on similar projects together to just talk about their projects and kind of share it with everyone else. So we did one for farmOS, Comet Farm did one, Photosync, Greg and Dan at Photosync did one. So there's a bunch of great videos here if you want to check it out. And yeah, like Doran said, they're starting to prepare for next season's collection as well. So yeah, I guess that's it. We'll call it a night and go forth.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Mike.
Yeah, sure. We'll talk to you next month.
Yep.
All right. Bye, everyone.